Hello again, every pony, and welcome to part 4 of our in-depth tutorial on how to draw vectors of MLP. In this part of our tutorial, we're going to be learning how to fill in our colors for our vector, now that we've already completed our outline, which you have either seen or didn't need to watch in the previous part of this tutorial. So, since we have finished our outline and done any tweaking that we may needed to do to make it look better, of course there's going to be a couple more things we'll do with that later on after we get our color fills in place, but for now, all we need to learn is how exactly we're going to go about coloring our vector. Now, first things first, you should never ever sample from your pictures or your photographs, your snapshots that you got from the show. They are typically inaccurate. They may look right on the picture, but when sampling from these photographs, from these images you've taken, they are oftentimes not exactly what you want. You're going to be looking for what's known as the hex value of the color that you're going to be using. So to find that, you can either get a reference sheet like this one I have here that has actual simple miniature drawings of each pony, and each one is colored in with simple fills that is the exact hex value for the color that they should be within the show. So the way we are able to sample from this, when you do your eyedropper tool using eye and you click on it, it's going to come up down here on your fill swatch at the bottom left hand, and if we open that up by double clicking, you can see the exact hex value right here, which is FABA61 in case someone can't read. But to keep that, we want to go ahead and Control C, copy and save that so we can actually apply it to our vector. Since I'm drawing Applejack, I'm sampling from Applejack. And you can see here it has a single color for every single thing that you need: her body, her mane, the outlines for everything, the hat, and so forth, including her cutie mark. It has colors for as well. So this is what you want to sample from, never from your snapshots that you've taken, as they can often be imprecise. So once we have our exact color copied, we can open up our fill here and Control V to paste. Hopefully we all know Control C and Control V. And then we want to make sure we don't have a stroke. That's just whenever you reopen Illustrator, it often puts the generic fill to white and the stroke to black. So we're going to go over to our layers here. We have separate layers for each of our colors. And so I'm going to go to body fill because that is what I sampled from. And all you're going to do is switch over to your pen tool now that we are assured that we have the right color that we're filling in our vector with. And we're going to go ahead and just kind of outline her body like we did before, except this time it's not quite as important because any kind of weird angles or curves will be hidden by the outline. So this is the most effective method that I have discovered, that I think works the best. Now, there isn't, again, any one way to do something when it comes to art. So there are other methods I'm sure that you could find out there that work just as well. But this is the one I am going to teach you. So prepare to follow along as I just go through this real quick and finish it up. Not anything too complicated. Now, actually, before I start here, you can see that / again on my pen, next to my pen there, as I go to just start drawing this. That is because even though they are on a different layer, these lines that we've drawn before, you can still continue on from that line, even though I'm selected a different layer. Now, if I was to click this, it would take me to the main layer. Let's see, actually, well, if I can get that. So I click that, and you can see it automatically switched me over to the main layer because I'm continuing off of that line. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to click Control Z, and I'm going to have to reapply my color. I can use this because this was the last color I had selected in my fill. Oh, and I want to make sure I don't have anything else selected, or else it'll assign that shape, that color. So you got to be aware of that. So switching back to the pen, that was just an example. So the reason it does that is because we have snap to point and the smart guides on. So that can be kind of detrimental. However, it is going to become actually helpful to us because we're going to go ahead and lock both our body and our tail and our main layers, all three of those. So that way when we go ahead and draw this, instead of being a hazard to us, oh, and don't forget to actually switch back to the body fill layer, or else it won't let you draw because the layer is locked. You can see that it no longer has that /. It is that asterisk, is the star symbol that will allow us to start a new line, or in this case, a new fill. And we're pretty much just going to freehand this, in a manner of speaking, and draw in our fill. And you can see as I draw it, it's going to fill in between the anchors where we're going. So and now, instead of being a hassle to us, our pen is actually snapping to the anchors that we've already drawn, which allows you to very quickly re-follow all the curves you've already made. Now, we could copy-paste some of this if we wanted. If we had, for example, like if her main was all one shape here, one line, we could copy-paste that line, place it under the main fill, and assign it the correct fill color. But since a lot of these lines are all separate, this is going to just be easier for us. And again, I'm not working on the main, I'm working on the body. So, gotta give Applejack her proper orange sheen. So we're probably just going to fast forward through the rest of this part. Right after I tell you something very important, hopefully a lot of you already know this, but in the show there's actually two shades most of the time for the characters. They have their foreground color, which is in the light, and then the kind of like the back hooves or legs that are somewhat in shadow, that are going to be a darker fill color. So don't make the mistake of filling in their entire body as all the same color. Keep an eye out. You can tell pretty easily in this one that their far legs are a darker shade, and that is actually in the reference sheet I have here. You can sample that far leg, as it says right here, far legs use a darker stroke color. So, I actually probably will provide you a link, if I'm feeling super generous, in the description to that reference. But we shall see. Okay, so right here, as we're coming to the eye that I mentioned before in the previous part of this tutorial, that this section right here between her eyelash, or whatever that you want to call this, and her nose is just the general fill. To get this as close as possible, because we don't have an actual solid line here to hide behind, you're going to want to go ahead and follow to the very tip of your outline that you've already drawn. And again, the very helpful, I'm going to have to lock the eyes, that'll be good. The very helpful smart guides letting us lock to that specific point. So taking from one point to the other, you're just going to try to follow the curve as best you can. You really can't see very well here. And if you ever have that problem, you can actually just go ahead and click this little swap fill and stroke double arrow. It'll allow you to see exactly where you're going. Now the line is a bit thick for this work right here, so we're just going to go with this. And again, everything is adjustable later, but this is technically the proper way you're supposed to do this, at least if you're following my rules. We might even end up changing that outline a bit because it does curve up a bit too sharply there, I think, at the end. Whenever you zoom in like this, you can tell all your little mistakes, but hopefully those who are viewing your art aren't going to bother zooming in that far typically, but if you're a nitpicker like myself, you'll want to correct it anyway. So just finishing up here in the last portion of our fill, connecting back, you see that circle next to the pen, knowing that I'm connecting that, and that becomes an entire shape that we're able to move around. So as you can see, that went under body fill, and we actually have our Applejack coming along quite nicely. It's actually kind of terrifying right now, but we're not going to worry about that at the moment. So we got our body filled in, so that's pretty much all said and done. We're going to go ahead and lock that for now, since we're going to come back to that later. And we're going to switch up to main fill. And again, going to our reference sheet and sampling our new color. Control C. And then back here again. And yeah, so then we'll just do the same thing we did for the body for the main. Okay, so we have that done. The only thing left is the tail. So I did mention I was probably going to add a tail fill. I'm going to do that now. Again, the color here is black. That is automatically assigned to this layer, so we're going to want to change that. And it's okay if it's the same as another layer we already have. I'm not really concerned about that. Green actually did pretty nice for us, so we're going to... The colors really having them different is only a nice tell for if you're trying to select a line and figuring out what layer it's hidden on. You can tell that way. Okay, so real quick, two things that I came across while drawing this. First of all, this looks terrible because I haven't quite drawn everything I need to for this outline on her tail. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And then this part here is her tail, again, as I said, is hidden behind the rest of her body. But this is going to get covered up by her leg. So just kind of quickly squiggling out a line to fill in that gap is no big deal, because again, it's going to be covered up. However, what you saw me do here, when I double click on any shape, line, or whatever, it goes into something called an isolation mode, so that only this shape is selected and editable. Everything else is locked, quote unquote. So sometimes when I'm having trouble connecting a path together, sometimes it just is stubborn, and when I was trying to get that last path to hook up with the anchor that I started with, it wasn't letting me. So usually an easy fix for that is just double clicking, sending this to isolation mode, and then trying to redraw that line again, and it worked like a charm. So moving on, we're going to go to our back legs and such, and I'm actually going to go back to the body fill layer. I'm going to lock our layer 9, which I forgot to rename. I'm going to name that tail fill. And I'm going to go ahead and go back to here, sample that back leg that we have here, copy, and now paste, then simply click our body fill layer and start drawing. Okay, now that we've drawn all these things, we actually want to make sure that I have these in the right order. I'm going to take this and throw it behind our original path, this one here, so that I can ensure the colors are in the proper order. So as you can see, we filled that leg in, and now it is covering the tail, and that looks a bit more proper. I'm going to do a Control Save, Control S. And now we're still working on this. We have a fair amount of the colors. Still looks super spooky because she doesn't have her eyes, which we'll take care of them in a minute. You can actually draw the eyes first before you do the fill, but again, the eyes are probably the hardest part, at least in my book, so I tend to leave those for last. Alright, so we're going to have to add... Actually, you know what? I'm not going to need a hat fill. I'm just going to go ahead and draw the fill on the same layer. That can be problematic, but for the sake of contradicting myself in the use as many layers as you possibly can, Meh. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do a sublayer. And then we simply lock the paths. And then our sublayer we can name hat fill. Okay. Again, so this is the part where we see, hey, the hat's covering her ear, so that's a problem. And this, again, this is the part where I go ahead and unlock everything again. I'm gonna open up our, not gonna unlock the picture. I'm gonna go under our body and find the ear, which ends up usually being at the bottom because it's what we drew first. It's an easy way to find it. Half the reason, again, I draw it first. I'm actually gonna go ahead and take it up to the main. Put it in front of that, and ta-da! It's in front of the hat and her mane. Simple as that. However, we still have that fill of the hat covering her body because the body fill is still behind the hat fill. To solve that, instead of trying to figure out how we can cut the layer and so forth and scramble it on top of everything else, I'm just going to redraw, and now we can sample from what we've already drawn because that is an exact value. And I'm going to redraw the body fill, at least part of it, over her ear because no one will notice. So the beautiful thing about vectors is everything is clean and smooth. And I'm just going to... And here we have that problem again. Let me drag... First of all, let me drag this top of the main. No, it's not. That's odd. Give me a second. Okay. So, I guess this is a good time as any. Sometimes this comes up. I'm not really sure why it does this in Illustrator. This is probably my mistake, and I feel like I shouldn't even be teaching you a tutorial if there's something I don't know. But at times, you will get this kind of spike for your curve off of a path. To fix that, simply take the handle and bring it all the way to the anchor, and it'll snap it to that point and actually get rid of that atrocious little line that came out of there. And they're easy to miss if you're not careful. And now, for some reason, it's not wanting me... It's asking me to delete the line, not actually start a new one. Oh, no. It did let me do it. This is not good for my ratings. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and bring that behind the ear, and just like that, it looks like her old ear again. Now, again, we still have some line issues here. Obviously, this is not complete. We're going to go ahead and go back and fix that later. And for now, we're going to... yes. That's what I remembered one of my for laters. Earlier I mentioned to you, actually we're going to turn off the visibility of all these except for the reference picture. I told you before in the previous part of this tutorial that I was going to show you how to draw these. It's really nothing different than what we've been doing. But we're going to go ahead and turn on our body layer and our main, pretty much all our outlines. And I'm going to go in under our main fill. I'm going to go back to our reference because this, again, is a different color. We're going to make sure I'm getting that exact swatch. Going to go back, paste that color there, and we're going to go ahead and just draw in exactly what we want here. Now, our problem is, since we have the main, its invisibility turned off, you can't actually draw on it. It's the same thing as it being locked. It's actually worse than being locked because you can't see it. It's as if it doesn't exist. So that is a problem for us. To fix this, I'm just going to do a sublayer. Excuse me. Turn on the visibility, and then do a sublayer. And then I can turn off the rest of what we've drawn so far, and then voila, I am able to draw on that layer as I please. So, trying to just follow along that outline as best you can. It doesn't have an actual outline. You're just following along the outside edge as best you can with your fill. And that looks about good. To make sure everything is hidden from view, we're going to curve that over like so. That doesn't look too bad. And we're going to go ahead and collapse that and go over to our tail, create a new sublayer here, turn off visibility so we can see what we're doing. This is going to go like so. Actually, let me turn off, I want to see something here. Okay, so this, I'm actually going to draw this without the outline being there, just so I can get a more accurate sketch. Like I said, her mane isn't the most complicated, such as rarities, but these little hair bands, if you will, can get a bit tricky. So again, that's just using fill. I'm going to turn back on her tail here to see kind of where that ended up. Okay, interesting. Gonna adjust the handle a bit to cover that. And I'm going to have to make several adjustments with that most likely. But as you can see here, if I turn off the tail, the outline of her tail, it's actually tucking in behind this. This red hair tie is in front of this poofy part of her tail at the end of her tail. And the rest of it is in front of it. So that's going to be a layering thing we're going to have to deal with later. As you can see, that looks kind of terrible right now with how we have everything. But again, before we make these adjustments, we're probably going to go back, I think, after we save, and color in all the outlines really quick. So filling in, all we have to do is go back to your reference wherever you've gotten it from, sample it using the eyedropper tool, go back and select the lines. An easy way to make sure you're not accidentally clicking on the fills, if you like, just lock all your fill layers again, except the hat is all the same. And then selecting again, this is the helpful what color is what, so I can tell that I'm selecting the outline and not the fill because it's red. And then we're just going to double click and copy paste, or just paste, we've already copied. And there you go, her hat is the proper color. Then we switch back, go to the body outline, and the outline for her back leg is actually the same color, so you don't have to worry about that being a darker swatch. And she's actually coming along. Here you can see, again, still quite terrifying with without the eyes, but as far as the body and such looks, it's actually looking pretty good. Other than some of the lines being on the wrong layers and the widths needing adjusting. So that's pretty much all we're going to do for now in this part of the tutorial. And the next one we'll be doing the eyes, my most favorite part of drawing vectors. So, I hope you all have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video.